Hi. So, welcome to the discussion on Written Ability Test or WAT. Now, before I tell you how to approach the WAT, let me give you a brief history of how did the WAT evolve. 10 years back, when I appeared for an admissions interview at Narsi Monji, an IIMs, there used to be a GD, a group discussion, and the group discussion was a rejection round. But then over the years, the top B schools realized that the group discussion was becoming slightly unfair. Unfair because a lot of people who could speak were not allowed to speak because there were a few who were very loud. So, the B schools came up with a solution. The solution was give them a paper, give them a pen, give them the topic and time and allow them to write. The expression is still the same, it is just that it is uninterrupted. That's what becomes Written Ability Test. Where will you see the WAT? What started as a practice with the IIMs a few years back has now been accepted by a lot of other business schools. You will see a WAT even if you have an admissions interview at a place like NIRMA. And as I said earlier, it has always been there with exams like WAT where the WAT doesn't happen with the interview, it happens beforehand. Hopefully, as the trend improves and as B schools realize that the WAT is a better indicator of how good a student is in terms of his ideation, more B schools will accept the WAT as either an adjunct to or a substitute for the group discussion or any other form of interview process. Next is, now that I know that I need to prepare for WAT either before or after my exams, the next thing is, should I also be aware of some other variant of WAT? The answer is yes. There is one variant of WAT. There is a slight twist in words. It's called AWT, Analytical Writing Test. Many people outside, including people from my industry, say that there is no big difference. But trust me, there is. There are two major differences. Now, written ability, written aptitude, difference number one is all about not just content, but how good are you at expressing. When you listen to someone, you might want to differentiate between someone who can express complex ideas and someone who takes a break every now and then. That is WAT for you. Analytical writing, as the name suggests, is more about how in-depth is your thought process. So when I compare a WAT with an AWT, and AWT is a lot about not just thinking but also factoring in counter arguments. A WAT is merely about thinking, yes, and the ability of expression. The number of grammatical mistakes in an AWT might not matter as much as they do in a WAT. So, to summarize, before we start discussing how to approach a WAT, what is the task at hand? Written ability, as the name suggests, will check A, my ability to write, but write what? The aptitude, the thoughts. I might have hundreds of things, hundreds of ideas related to what I have the topic on hand, but does that mean I'm going to put all of them? No. A well written WAT in the time constraints that you have nowadays is somewhere between 3 to 5 reasons elaborated over a duration, over a length of approximately 200 to 300 words. Now, with those kind of constraints, what do I do? When I think about what I am supposed to write, I also simultaneously prioritize what I am going to write, A, and B. 50% if dedicated to content, the remaining 50% has to go to presentation. Presentation in what sense? Take it one point at a time. The first part of presentation is I have an idea. How do I put it into a sentence? The second part of this presentation is how do I combine sentences into paragraphs? And the third part of the presentation is how do I arrange those paragraphs so that now I have a narrative that is both comprehensive and engrossing. When you know that this is what you are supposed to do, now we move on to the next part, which is how do I identify the content when I approach a WAT. To understand how to approach the content, let me show you an example. Now, when you read this topic, subsidies are like caste-based reservations. It's a 5-word topic. There is so much to think. The sentence is they are like caste-based reservations. and the obvious immediate response in a person's mind is, oh yes, they are. Oh no, they are not. How do you justify? That will be the task ahead. So when you read a topic like this and you realize that there is an impulsive response, that is fine up to a certain extent. What I would suggest is, instead of going by the impulsive response, ask yourself, give yourself 2 minutes to think. When you say they are like caste-based reservations, do you have reasons for them? Yes. First reason for saying a yes, there is obviously an economic stimulus involved. Second reason for saying a yes, both of them can be used for political motives. The third reason for saying a yes, subsidies are like caste-based reservations, eventually they are economic payoffs. A particular section will gain, but by the opinion of a lot of people, some other section loses. So are they balanced out? Yes, which is also why they have equal number of critics. No, I don't think subsidies are like caste-based reservations. I have reasons for them. The purpose is completely different. Caste-based reservations come out of constitution. Subsidies do not. They have a different purpose. These have a different purpose. Good. If you take a no, you also know that you are going to dedicate an entire paragraph. Great. Now you know the thought process when you list out the reasons for a yes or you list out the reasons for a no tells you whether your overall WAT will conclude, yes, I believe subsidies are like caste-based reservations. No, I do not believe subsidies are like caste-based reservations. And that is probably the best thing about the WAT topics you extended till now. There is minimal chance of saying, yes, I agree, but I have my reservations. No, I do not agree, but in some cases, I might create an exception. It will usually be a very clear yes or a very clear no. Now, I talked about paragraphs. So let's move from the content part to the presentation part. Now that I have my ideas in front of me, how do I present them? Basic minimum expectation, you should have at least one paragraph to introduce what you are going to say. One paragraph which is just a reason wherein you elaborate why do you think so. But then remember, it has to be one reason per paragraph. I'll come back to this in a few seconds. And then you have your last paragraph, which is the conclusion paragraph. One paragraph at a time. How do you introduce a topic? You can pretty much talk about the general context in reference to that topic. How do you elaborate your reasons? I said one reason per paragraph. Don't merge reasons into a single paragraph. Don't split a particular reason into two paragraphs. That done, I said the conclusion part. And now that I know that all of my reasons have been in support of the same conclusion, what do I do with the conclusion? Usually a conclusion is a formal closure. You really don't have to show off all your literary skills in the conclusion only. So if your conclusion is just a single sentence, I'm absolutely fine with it, because all that impression, all the scoring that you had to accumulate, you've already done it in the rest of the paragraphs. So it's not that all is well that ends well. A conclusion can be as plain as possible as long as all the meat is in the previous paragraphs. So now to summarize, I have a WAT topic in front of me. What do? 1. I read the topic, I identify the reasons to say a yes or a no, and thereby I decide whether I'm going to say a yes to the topic or a no to the topic. For the next 15 minutes probably, I write everything, and when I write, the rule says, as I said earlier, when you write, you write. You think whatever you want to write, and then you write, you finish the writing and you go back and check. You don't stop multiple times when you write. So you write it out. As I said earlier, don't worry about the mistakes. You will have your dedicated 2 to 3 minutes at the end, up to 5 minutes depending on how much have you written. Go back, make the corrections. Once you are done with the corrections, people come and ask me, sir, I've written a WAT. Have I done a good job? I want to get it evaluated. Obviously, there will be people around who will evaluate it for you, but what I've always said is, on the actual test day, Once you have thought and you have written and you have done the proofreading and you have to submit, who decides whether you've done a good job? The answer is read it. If you feel good about it, you've done a really good job. If you don't feel great about it, you still have to submit it. And that is where we come to the last part. The last part, how to practice and where to find topics of practice from. You will find some topics online. You will find a lot of topics on my website, and I'll leave you with a few topics at the end of this slide. What do I do with those topics? You read a topic and you divide your practice into 3 parts. First part, the practice of thinking. Whatever topic you read, make it a habit of jotting down points, like I explained earlier, points to say a yes and points to say a no. We all have a thought process. Let's make it more structured. The second part of practice, now that you can see your points, what do? You write. But when you write, don't have extremely high expectations while writing, because you're going to have the third part also, which is how to proofread. So when you write, make it a free flowing expression. You write, you don't worry about the spelling and grammar, you don't worry about the length of the sentences, you don't even worry about the time, you just write. Learn to express first. That because you are going to learn how to correct it later, and if you can write all that you can think about on a topic in 45 minutes through practice, through the third part, which is editing, making corrections, you'll obviously be able to bring down those 45 minutes of wonderful expression to 20 or 30 minutes of crisp but equally exciting expression over a practice of 8 to 10 topics. I hope this has been helpful. Have a wonderful day ahead.